In October 2017, I developed a tingling sensation in my stomach. At first, I thought it was just a temporary discomfort and tried to deal with it myself. I went to the pharmacy and bought antacids. For the first few days, the medication seemed to have some effect, but my symptoms quickly worsened. I started to feel nauseous and my appetite disappeared. Over the next few days, I felt weaker and weaker because I hadn't eaten properly for almost a week. One night, my breathing also started to become difficult, which made me very worried. My husband realized that the situation was very serious and immediately took me to the emergency room. When we arrived at the hospital, I felt my breathing was becoming more and more difficult, which was very frightening to me. I could no longer walk, and I felt like I didn't have enough oxygen in my lungs anymore. In this situation, my husband immediately sought the help of the medical staff. A nurse saw my condition and she very quickly found a wheelchair for me. The nurse put me in the wheelchair and pushed me toward the emergency room. I remember what it was like. I felt a great heaviness in my chest. I tried to breathe deeply, but it didn't feel like oxygen was getting into my lungs. I was immediately placed in a bed. The doctors diagnosed and treated my symptoms. They gave me some oxygen to relieve my breathing difficulties and then performed a series of tests. Many doctors and nurses surrounded me. They put N4 in me. I felt my heartbeat become abnormally fast. My body gradually lost its strength and began to become cold. My vision began to become blurred and the sounds around me faded away. I felt like I was pinned to the bed, unable to move. Suddenly, I felt my soul begin to leave my body, as if an invisible force was pulling me upward. I was being drawn by a powerful force, and I no longer had control over my body. I began to float upward, as if I were floating alone in the dark night sky. In this unknown realm, everything became very peaceful and beautiful. I was surrounded by a very soft light, and this light made me feel very warm. All my worries and pains disappeared here. In this space, I felt that I was not alone and that a mysterious force was guiding and protecting me. Suddenly, I appeared in a room made of stone walls, where the atmosphere was somewhat ancient and mysterious. The room looked like the great hall of a medieval castle. In the center of the room was a long wooden table. There were 3 white plates on the table, one on either side of the table. One was at the end of the table, which looked very striking. The table was decorated with cutlery and goblets that looked exquisite. I noticed 2 rather large bowls in the center of the table, containing some plants I had never seen before. They were very brightly colored and had some strange patterns on their green leaves. I couldn't identify their species, but I could smell a fresh fragrance. I felt very confused and wondered what this place was. Why am I here? There was no one in the room but me. Suddenly, a man appeared in front of me. I was very surprised by his appearance, because the man was Jesus. He was wearing a white robe and holding a golden cross in his hand. I could clearly see his beard and every hair on his head. Jesus' hair was flowing slightly. His beard was neatly trimmed and revealed an air of determination. His eyes were deep and kind, as if they could see into my heart. He smiled at me like a father would do with his own child. His presence brought me an unparalleled peace and tranquility. I asked him, "Why am I here? What is this place?" Jesus smiled and replied, "This is heaven, the home of your soul." I asked Jesus in great confusion, "Am I already dead?" "No, you are not dead, your body is fighting against disease, only your soul has come here." Jesus answered, Jesus went on to tell me not to be afraid. He invited me to sit down next to him. I felt very nervous because I didn't know what was happening or what Jesus would say. He gently patted my hand. His palm was warm and firm, giving me a feeling of reassurance. I gazed into Jesus' face and felt the care and love in his gaze. In his presence, I felt my heart was released and all my pain and worries disappeared. Jesus said to me that he also had a gift for me. His finger pointed to a door nearby. The door was wooden and looked very heavy and old. Slowly, the door opened. My father stepped out of the door. My father died of a heart attack in the year 2008. When I saw him, I was shocked. He looked very young. He wore a simple white robe and no shoes, but his feet were very clean. His smile was warm and kind, as if it took me back to my childhood. He came toward me and hugged me tightly, and I could feel his warmth and love. He told me that he had been watching over me, which was a great comfort to me. Jesus looked at us with a smile and then said to me, "Do you want to try the food here?" I nodded my head. Jesus then picked up a goblet and poured a glass of clear water. I took the goblet and I smelled the water inside. I smelled a fresh odor. As I drank the water, I felt my soul was purified and nourished. I looked closely at the food on the plate and noticed that it was a plant I had never seen before. Its leaves were a dark green color and looked very fresh. When I put it in my mouth, I felt a wonderful taste. It had a light aroma. Its taste was also very unique, with a very sweet taste. I think it was more like a fruit. This food made me feel very satisfied. During this time, my father and I also talked about something from my childhood. My father used to love fishing and he would often take me with him. One time, I went fishing with my father on the beach. At that time, I was only 6 years old, and I was curious about everything. When I bent down to pick up a big shell, my hand got caught in a crab. I started to cry. My father took a pair of scissors out of the fishing tackle box and told me to put my hand over. I was scared and my father told me not to worry. He cut off the crab's claws so I could escape from its trap. Now that I think about it, it was quite funny. Then my father asked me if I wanted to go see where he lives now. I nodded my head. My father took me to a beautiful garden. There were flowers and green trees. I felt very happy, as if all my worries and cares had been blown away. Then, we came to a magnificent palace. It seemed to be built with the most precious materials and the most advanced technology. I was in awe, never having seen such a magnificent building. My father told me that this was where he lived now. Inside the palace there were countless rooms and halls, each beautifully decorated to make people feel incredibly comfortable and warm. When I entered his room, I saw a room full of personal characteristics. There were some of his favorite paintings and photos hanging on the wall, and some ornaments and souvenirs were scattered all over the room. The furniture in the room was made of wood and looked very sophisticated. There was a picture of him and my mother hanging on the bed, which looked very cozy. There was also a bookcase in the room, with many books on history and culture. The whole room looked very neat and cozy. I could feel my father's love for this room. I went to the balcony of the room and I saw many angels in the garden and the square. They were laughing and singing, making people feel happy and joyful. I was very surprised. I never thought heaven would be so beautiful. My father told me that there is no pain and no worries here, only love and peace. Here, everyone can find his or her own joy and happiness. I sat on the balcony with my father for a while. My father told me that although he had left the earth, he would be by my side in another way. Whenever I feel lonely or helpless, I just need to close my eyes, and he will be by my side. His words made me feel warm and comforted, and I knew he would always be there for me to rely on. Suddenly, my soul began to tremble slightly. I knew I had to say goodbye to my father. I turned around and hugged him tightly. I slowly let go of him and he gently patted my shoulder. I told him that I would always remember his love and his teachings. My father smiled and nodded. His eyes filled with love. When I woke up, my consciousness was still a little fuzzy. I had some kind of strange mask on my face and an 4-needle in my body. These strange things made me feel a little sick. My family told me that my kidneys and lungs had begun to fail. If I arrived at the hospital any later, I was afraid I would not survive. I was shocked to hear this news, but at the same time I felt incredibly grateful and lucky. When I told my husband about it, he didn't express any opinion. When the doctor came to my bedside, I couldn't resist telling him about my experience. However, my husband did not agree. He reminded me that I couldn't talk about it anymore, or I would be sent to a psychiatric hospital. Hearing these words, I felt very disappointed and frustrated. I felt that everything I had experienced was real. Now it was considered a manifestation of mental illness, which made me feel very aggravated. I know my husband was concerned, but his words made me feel so helpless. After this incident, my life has become very peaceful. I used to have a lot of anxiety and worry, but those feelings seem to have disappeared. I can feel a sense of inner peace and tranquility. This is a feeling I have never felt before in my life. I used to have the habit of smoking, but since that experience, my desire for nicotine has also disappeared. It was as if I had never smoked before. It's a wonderful change, and I can't imagine myself being able to successfully quit smoking. I am now aware of the importance of life and not wasting my time with something stupid. I try to keep my inner peace and clarity because I know how precious and important this feeling is. This experience has changed the trajectory of my life and made me more mature and stronger. I will keep going to church now, and I am eager to learn more about Christianity. I share my experience with other believers. This experience has also made me more concerned about those who are in distress. I try to bring them some warmth and hope through my story. I believe this is what God wants me to do. This experience made me feel the presence and love of God. I believe this experience is unique, and I hope more people can feel God's love. The story takes place when I was 27 years old and I experienced a terrible accident. I was unfortunately hit by a falling plank of wood. I died in this accident. Next, I went to another world. I also met a person there who gave me comfort and warmth. I also saw heaven. For some reason, I chose to return to Earth to continue my life. Have you ever been hit on the head? Saw a bright blue light. That's the best way to describe my crossing. If you ever see that light between your eyes, that's the way to heaven. As a business consultant, my job is to provide assistance to business owners, helping them with a variety of business and team issues. I would understand their needs and provide the best solutions to achieve their business goals. One day, I was getting ready to meet with a client. At the time, I was walking down a street. There was a second-floor business on this street that was being renovated. I didn't notice this at the time because there were no tips or safety measures around. When I walked directly below the store, I suddenly heard a loud bang. Then, a strong impact came from my head and I felt a strong pain. Then, I saw a bright blue light. My head started bleeding nonstop. I was so scared and panicked that people around me started calling emergency numbers. My consciousness started to become blurry. The bright blue light was still flashing in my vision as if it was a supernatural presence. I didn't know where the light came from, but it emitted a strong heat that made me feel very warm. I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't know what to expect. I felt as if I was in a state of solitude. I wasn't sure if I was alive or if I had crossed over to another world. My heartbeat gradually became faint and I felt like my life was slowly fading away. Suddenly, I heard a soft voice telling me, "Stop struggling, your injuries are now very serious. I will take you to a safe place." This voice brought me an inexplicable peace and comfort. My pain gradually eased, as if healed by a mysterious power. The fear and anxiety inside me was also gradually soothed. I followed the light and began to move upward. I felt my body became very light. Slowly, I left the ground and floated in the air. My soul became light and free of any pain and constraint. This experience made me feel very wonderful. I felt that I was wrapped in an incomparably pure energy. In this state, time and space seemed to lose their meaning. I floated into the sky above the city. Everything on the streets started to become small, like mini models of the city. Vehicles were going back and forth like insects, and crowds were like ants. I saw people hurrying through the streets, they were busy chasing their dreams. Everyone had their own unique stories and goals. I saw cafes on the street where people gathered. Soon I was off the planet. I was transported into a whole new dimension. In this dimension, I saw beautiful and mysterious planets and galaxies. Countless stars shone with a mysterious light. Suddenly, I appeared in a brightness. A step appeared in front of me. The steps seemed to be made of soft cotton, giving a comfortable and warm feeling. As I stepped on each step, I immediately felt a light force lift me up. No matter how hard I pressed it, they always gently accepted me. I could not feel any pressure. It was as if I had become one with the steps. With each step, new steps appeared before my eyes like magic, greeting my steps perfectly. Each step was full of soft elasticity, and this comfortable feeling spread throughout my body. When I put my foot down, the steps would sink slightly and then quickly return to their original state. At the same time, these steps also emit a special aroma. It was a fresh and fragrant smell. I no longer felt tired, but full of energy and motivation. Finally, I reached the last step. As I stopped, I spotted a small bridge. The bridge spans over a peaceful stream. It was very simple in shape and exuded a sense of rustic and pure beauty. The bridge is made of white stone. The surface of the stone is smooth and delicate. After years of baptism, it shows a unique natural texture. When the sun shines on it, the stone shines with a faint light. The water under the bridge flows slowly and quietly. The bridge is lined with various flowering plants, and the fragrance of the flowers fills the air. When the breeze blew, the flowers began to sway gently. On the opposite side of the bridge, I saw my father and other relatives. Their eyes were filled with deep love. A white light surrounded them, giving off a dazzling and pure glow. This white light was the brightest, purest white I had ever seen. It felt like this light could penetrate all gloom and negativity. It was as if this light was a symbol of love that tied me to my loved ones. Behind my loved ones, a huge building appeared, which was also built of white stone. This building exuded a solemn and sacred atmosphere. It was so huge that it seemed to stretch to the end of the sky. The first person who spoke to me was my father. He said, "Dear daughter, what are you doing up there?" I replied, "Dad, I don't know. I was hit on the head by something, and then I came to this place." There was a flash of concern in my father's eyes, and he touched my shoulder gently. He just told me, "I can't stay here yet. I think they are so lucky. I envy them for being able to live here." I saw a bright light at the top of the building, and I wanted to get closer to see it more clearly. Just as I was about to approach, my great-grandfather blocked my way. He looked at me with firm, loving eyes. He told me that it was not the right time for me to approach the lamp. But I didn't give up, and I tried again to get closer. This time, my father stood in front of me. In a gentle but firm voice, he told me that now was not the time and that I needed to be patient. I was a little angry. That's when the rest of the family said to me, "Now you have to go back, you have a lot of things to accomplish." I replied, "I don't want to go back, I want to stay with you, and I don't know how to get back." Suddenly, a strong bright light appeared above me, and it was like a lightning bolt in the dark. I looked up to find the source of the light, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I actually saw Jesus. I was surrounded by his light, and I felt a strong sense of love. His light gave me hope and comfort. I asked Jesus, "Do I have to go back? Do I have a choice?" Jesus answered, "Of course you do. You are hurt very badly. If you want to stay here, no one will blame you." I began to think about my answer. Here I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and tranquility. I can be away from pain forever and have eternal joy. When I thought about my son, I also felt a deep sense of attachment and responsibility. Then I asked Jesus, "What will happen to my mother down there? And my son, can I let them come up together?" He didn't answer me directly. He gently placed his hand on my shoulder and gestured for me to look down. Following his guidance, my family appeared in my line of sight. I saw myself lying in the operating room. My mother was in the hospital hallway, her eyes revealing sadness and loss. The rest of my family was also immersed in grief. Jesus whispered in my ear that they were sad for you. Those words touched my heart deeply. I could feel the love and attachment they had for me. He also showed me a picture of the future. I saw my mother becoming even thinner. She was sitting at home in the picture, no longer eating regularly, and her body was becoming gradually weaker. I felt my mother's loneliness and helplessness in the picture, and she had lost her enthusiasm and motivation for life. Her eyes are full of melancholy and loss, and she no longer takes care of her health as she used to. Then, I saw my son's graduation ceremony. I saw him standing on the stage without his family by his side. His eyes revealed sadness and loss. He looked extraordinarily lonely in the crowd, with no one to share this momentous occasion with. He had achieved an excellent result, which made me feel immensely proud. This scene made me even more determined to go back. I want to be there for my son at every important moment in his life. He needed my love and care. And I didn't want him to face the hardships of life alone again. Suddenly, I heard the prayers of my family. Their voices cut through the barriers of time and space. My husband, who clasped his hands together, closed his eyes and prayed silently. His prayers were filled with love and hope that I would wake up. My mother was also praying for me. She poured out her worries about me to God. My friends joined in the prayers. I saw that their prayers were gathering into a powerful energy that gradually came together. This energy began to shimmer softly and form a transparent sphere. As I gazed into that ball of energy, I felt the thoughts and blessings of my family and friends, as if they were right there with me. I decided to return to Earth and to my family and friends. I stood on the steps, facing Jesus and my family, and gave my decision. Jesus nodded his head and acquiesced to my decision. Then I thought to myself, will I go back and experience physical pain? Jesus seemed to know what I was thinking. He said, "You don't have to worry about this, I will give you a healthy body." His voice was so full of comfort that I felt overwhelmingly at ease. I began to move slowly downward, and the steps seemed to turn into a smooth escalator. I crossed the roof and then entered the operating room. The doctors and nurses were focused on the surgery as they worked to repair my injured body. Jesus put my soul back into my body without incident. The surgery went very well. A month later, I had made a full recovery. The doctors were amazed at the speed of my recovery. They could not explain the reason for it, only I knew the miracle of it. The grace of Jesus enabled me to regain my health. The pain in my body gradually dissipated and was replaced by a return of strength and vitality. I am grateful for the second chance Jesus has given me and am determined to approach life with a more cherished attitude. Although I also miss my father terribly, I understand that he is already waiting for me in that beautiful place. I am confident that we will be together again in the near future. I know that I have more important things to do now. I long to be able to stand by my son's side on the day he graduates and be proud of his accomplishments. This experience has given me a deep understanding of how precious life is. I will face each day with a grateful heart. I know that no matter what the future holds, Jesus will be by my side to guide me.